We're back with On the Road of Recovery with Angel from Akron, Ohio. How are you doing today?
Fabulous.
Thanks so much for coming out and joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you start off by describing your childhood?
Sure. Well, I was a child that was actually born to two very active addicts. Both my parents were heroin addicts. It's almost like when I think about my childhood, it feels very almost cliche.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I grew up in a trailer park, you know, in the midst of domestic violence, poverty-stricken, heroin addicts, dirty kids, you know. Like in hindsight, looking back, I probably should have been taken by the state, but I had two grandparents that were kind of saving grace. So that's basically like my very, very early childhood. When we moved out of the trailer park, we went to this outer city of Detroit, Michigan. It's called Brightmoor. Still the same kind of thing. It just wasn't a trailer anymore. Very desolate. There was a lot of, you know, racial conflicts in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Still the same thing. Very, very poor city. My parents, I wasn't allowed to go to school there because I was not going to fit into my school.
Okay.
So they were kind of afraid for how it would affect me, whether or not if I would become like a victim of the environment or whatever. So I had to go to a school outside of my district in Livonia, which would be the equivalent of Stowe or Hudson.
Okay.
So from very early childhood, I learned how to lie about where I was from, what my identity was, who I was, what kind of parents I had. The school that I went to, the kids, their parents, you know, had it together, were very clean, were socially involved with their children at school and the teachers, and you know, everything that I felt that I wasn't, I was seeing on these other children. So I learned how to be secretive, which really in return what it did was it made me turn inwardly on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to label myself, you know, as dirty, not good enough, poor, undeserving,
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of those things, those lies, the false belief system that begins to be a part of our foundation as human beings. So, you know, like when I think about like the emotional aspect of my childhood, I don't really recall my mom being there. Like I know she was there. It's almost like a phantom.
Mm-hmm.
She was in and out of recovery. And like I don't remember any emotional connection to her. Like I don't remember like hugging her or being nurtured or any of those things that a mother is supposed to do. It was actually my grandmother who stood in that spot for her. You know, like one of my, like it's kind of upsetting when I think about it, but like one of my most connecting memories to my grandmother was I remember laying in her lap and I had lice so bad that it was considered an infestation, and they had laid eggs in my eyebrows and my eyelashes, and she had to go through with the tweezers and pull them out one by one. But I remember like thinking to myself, like, this is actually, well, in hindsight now, it was the first time that I felt valid as a human being, you know, but it reminded me, even in adulthood now when I look back, like how we care for an animal when it's emaciated,
Right.
you know, when it's infested with fleas. You know, we bring them in, we take care of them, we pick through their fur, you know what I mean? So even that, when I look in hindsight, like my first memory of being validated as a human being is the equivalent of an animal.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like that's so bizarre that's a foundational memory for
Yes.
me. You know, so you know, learning to lie and be something else that I wasn't, you know, was like firsthand in my life. You know, not from this neighborhood. I can't let them know I don't live here. You know, don't let them know that your parents are heroin addicts. You know, that you're from a broken home, or however you want to label it. So lying came natural. You know. So let me think that I, you know, as far as I think my my mother got clean in like 86, but that still is like a blur, you know what I mean? And now having recovery myself, now when I look back, I'm like, I don't know if I call that recovery.
Right.
It might be a little bit of abstinence here and there, but that's not recovery. So, yeah, basically, you know, like if I had to sum up what my life was like as a child, it felt very barren.
Gotcha. So as you get into teenage years, when did you first start experimenting yourself with alcohol or drugs?
Well, to be honest with you, like, so the first time I ever drank, I was 11. I remember going behind the garage with my friend at the time. Like I can still remember the taste, what it was. It was a Budweiser in a bottle, you know what I mean? And it was almost like being released. Like my chrysalis had finally broke open and I was able to be a human being, and that was okay. And I don't remember anything after that. You know, I don't even know if that was the only drink I had. But that was definitely the catalyst into the next dimension for me, you know, and it didn't stop there. I had brothers, you know, that were, my one brother's 2 years older than me. The other one, I think, is like 6 years older than me. He kind of lived his own little life separately, but me and my other brother, the one that's 2 years, were very close in age, hung out with the exact same people. And, you know, living in Detroit, gangs they were a thing. And in the late 80s and early 90s, they were a real thing. And, you know, so marijuana and smoking weed and hanging out and gang banging and stealing cars and all that kind of stuff was pretty normal. And again, I was 11 years old. So for quite some time, I just basically, you know, drank here and there and did some cocaine here and there. You know, had a child. I was a day shy of 17. I actually had a child with somebody who was a full-blown alcoholic. Tried to live a somewhat normal life. I moved out very, very early, got married, had 2 children, ended up marrying a drug addict. Go figure that one, right? You know, and still developed or continuously built upon the hatred that I had for drug addicts and that I would never be like that. I ended up selling drugs. You know, it was when Oxycontin hit, and we just so happened to have a person who was getting like a ridiculous, copious amount that no human should ever have been prescribed.
Right.
Okay. So we were selling those, which again just reinforced how much I couldn't stand drug addicts. In the meantime, though, occasionally popping one here and there, and that was okay though because I didn't do it every day. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I didn't do it every day, so therefore I'm not.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of how I used in like my early adult years, late teenage, early adult. And, you know, my ex-husband was just rocking it out in the Oxycontin world, you know, taking them, you know, he had done crossed over the threshold into heroin addiction. I didn't know that. I think I had a feeling, but, you know, really couldn't see it for what it was. I ended up in college for nursing. That's what I wanted to do. And everything was fine. And my ex-husband actually had lost his job. And I was working 3rd shift for a company, going to school 1st shift, and then coming home and taking care of some very small children, and I couldn't keep up. So I started eating Percocets and then sometimes Oxycontins or liquid Oxycontin. And it was the last few months of school. And I remember not having any pills. I couldn't get any pills. And at the time, my ex-husband was like, and I couldn't miss school. Like I was in an accelerated program. You miss one day, you miss a lot. It's not okay, you know. And I already had an issue with the spirit of perfection. Everything I did, I had to do perfectly, and I had to be on top of everything. And I'm a strong person, and all those things that get fed to us as kids, you know. So he's like, oh, just do some heroin. It's the exact same thing, you know. Fatal words of an addict, you know. So that's how I ended up crossing over into heroin.
So did you graduate from nursing school?
I did. And I passed my NCLEX and all that good stuff.
While in the methadone clinic? Okay. Okay. So after nursing school, get a job in the profession then?
I did, yeah. I was a private nurse for a while.
Okay. And how did that work? So were you still on methadone at the time?
I was on methadone part of the time, and then I ended up getting what they call a rapid detox because I was dropping dirty. So I'd already kind of relapsed, and I didn't kind of relapse. Kind of relapse.
Right.
That's like old addict thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of relapse. No, you were taking methadone and shooting heroin. That's a relapse, huh? But no, sorry. Okay, so yeah, half the time I was on methadone. I was no longer a private nurse, and I was actually working in the projects up in Cleveland for a company, taking care of a baby that was on a ventilator, you know, and nodding out. So I would be working third shift there, and then I went to another house first shift, you know, and definitely taking care of people under the influence. And then I quit nursing because I was like, I can't do it no more. My disease was, it was overbearing and unmanageable. And then there was also like this part of me that knew that there was a possibility that I could hurt somebody.
Okay.
And I knew that I could not live with that would be my demise, you know, to hurt somebody under my care. Because I took what I did pretty serious.
Yeah.
You know, I love people. I love helping and participating in their healing. And it was just, I'm glad I got out when I did, you know.
So if you can think back to the 2 weeks prior to getting sober, can you describe what life was like at that point in time?
Before getting sober, it was really dark.
Okay.
It was very, very dark. I think I gave up, you know, at the time, you know, fentanyl was like the thing. It still is the thing, but, you know, people were seeking it out then instead of heroin. You know, in hindsight, I'm like, that was dumb. But I think it was like 2015, I decided that I wasn't going to do heroin anymore and decided to do methamphetamines.
Okay.
You know, for whatever reason, I decided that was going to be more easier.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a dark, 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 dark world. It is so dark. You know, like we always hear about like the weird psychosis of people, you know, murdering other people. And it was just spiritually dark. You know, there's a lot of evil people involved, you know, and I don't mean like just drug addicts. You have like drug addicts who are like lost, you know, and desperate, and I understand that. And then you have like good people and regular people, and then you have people who are, there's some of them that are evil and definitely involved with methamphetamines. I ran into quite a few people who were evil. So I was afraid towards the end, like very afraid for my life. I had been robbed and actually beaten pretty badly. You know, escaped a car that I remember riding in this car. So I got robbed. I was a girl and I sold drugs and I thought I was cool. You know, I thought I was real gangster, and I put myself in a lot of dangerous situations. And in all reality, I should be dead or in prison right now. But during this particular incident, riding in the car after like a group of people had robbed me for what I had and my money and took my car and my phone and all that stuff. And there was like a convoy of them. I remember riding in the car, and I know my face was bleeding and I had like a tooth knocked out. And I remember very clearly hearing a voice telling me like, you're going to die, you know, like you're going to die. In hindsight, I know it was God, you know, and I knew that at that point I had to either do something, jump out of the car, try to create a conversation with the guy who's driving the truck, you know what I mean? And I remember turning and asking him, what are you going to do with me? And when he turned and looked at me, he looked so afraid. Like he looked so afraid. You know, now when I look at pictures of my face, I'm like, well, that's why he was afraid. You know, he looked mangled.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know. I don't know. You know, and I'm crying, I can barely breathe or whatever. And I remember cars were turning and I saw them up at these stop signs, and he had slowed down just enough, and I could feel like this thing come over me, like almost like getting ready. And he was like, run. So when he slowed down enough, I opened the car door and I ran. And, you know, I remember that as a part of my life, that this was not the beginning of what you are going to endure. This is going to, you know what I mean? This is going to be your life. Somebody is going to kill you. You're going to die. You know what I mean? It's a very dark, dark world. The people that you're involved with are very dark. But towards the very, very end, I'm talking within days, you know, having conversations with God, like, listen, either come and get me or I'm going to kill myself, you know. And it wouldn't have been the first attempt. I had attempted back in like 2014 or 15, and it was actually with black tar heroin, and it was an intentional overdose, and I was revived. And so I, even when I had said it to God, I had full intentions. You know what I mean? Either you do this or I'm doing it. And it showed up in the form of an APD.
Okay.
So yeah, I did want help. The inside wanted help. The outside couldn't vocalize that I wanted help. I don't even know if I had the language to speak it.
So when the Akron Police Department came and got you and probably saved your life, where'd they send you? What'd you get to do? How did you end up here today?
Right. I went to jail, so I got pulled over. Poor cop. Like I always tell people, even like when I do my story, I'm like, this guy was really a saint, because drug addicts, you think you know every street law, and I consider myself to be intelligent, but that might be a farce in itself. You know what I mean? But this poor guy, and I probably cut him down so deeply, or tried to at least, and he was a nice guy. I ended up going to jail. He finally ID'd who I was. 45 minutes later, I'm sitting on a curb, and I'm still not giving my name up. And they found me. I have this big, huge, like pink mohawk. My original picture when I first got arrested, I look all nice and regular. My hair is brown. It's up in a ponytail. Now I have this 3-foot mohawk. So it took them a little while, but they ended up taking me to the county. I was, I had a KPS for a while. I was a runner. I was good at it, and so I was sent to what they call core housing, and that means there's like 5 rooms, okay? And I think maybe 3 of those, in that it's there's like an outer part where you can go and you can watch TV, and then I think there's 4 other cells, so it might only be 4. 3 of them were full, and those people were never coming out, so it was a whole lot of time to think to yourself. And laying there, I remember laying in the bed and crying, and it was the first time I actually came in contact with a Bible. I wanted nothing to do with God. I definitely didn't want nothing to do with Jesus. Don't even say that name in my presence. You know what I mean? I remember laying there, and I had a Bible with me, and I was crying, and it was like, it's gonna make me cry. But it was the first time that I felt some sort of familiarity, or even the sensation of being home, I guess. Like it felt like, okay. Like I was like, okay, something is happening. However it's going to happen, I'm completely at peace with it. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. Like I'm okay. And it was actually Judge Bro, who I saw the other day, that sentenced me, which is really funny because I like rub shoulders and elbows with judges. It's so bizarre. It's so weird. So I ended up, going to CBCF. I wanted to do prison, because I know best. I'm like, you know what, just give me my time, which was like 10 months in prison. I'm like, just give me that. I would have not, I either would have done very, very well in prison, which I do believe I would have done very well in prison, and that would have been a problem. You know what I mean? Because then it would have made it hard to go back.
Right.
So they're like, no, we're not putting you in prison. You're going to CBCF. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll go to CBCF. And I did, and I flourished, and it really did kind of start with like the whole praying. I knew that I had done everything before in my past as a human being to try to stay sober or quit and without recovery. I never once attended a meeting. I actually had like a resentment towards NA as a kid because my parents were in it, and as far as I was concerned, they didn't do well, so I blamed it on NA. But knowing some supernatural force would have to pull me out of where it was that I was, residing at. And every chance that I got, every meeting that women brought in, every Bible study, anything that had to do with healing or the promotion of healing or a chance to examine yourself or to grow, I had attached myself to, like a toddler to a mom's leg. Like I was not playing. And once I got like a small taste of it, what it felt like, the small amounts of liberation and freedom, and like the grave clothes falling off, I just kept running with it. I was like, this is my life. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I felt lighter. I felt like I had been, resurrected, that I was changing and transforming, that my mind and my thoughts and all of these things that were oppressing me for such a long time were starting to lift. And I felt like for the first time in my life that I could actually lift my head up, look at people, speak to people, and start to understand myself and to grow and to change. And that was like almost like my new addiction.
So after you left CBCF, where'd you go? What'd you decide to do?
So there would be these people that would come in and invade. And one of them was Reverend Sandy Riffle. She would come in, and I was like, she's such an odd little duck. But you know, I loved her. I'm like, she's such an odd little person. So once I figured out where she was from, and you were allowed to go out for like religious services, so church services and meetings and stuff, I actually went to Community of Christ. And I remember like walking through the doors, and you know, like in movie scenes where they're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it felt. It was the exact same feeling that I had when I was laying in the bed and I felt home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I felt when I walked through the doors. I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be at. And I remember, like, I didn't really have anywhere to go afterwards, and even when I was going to get released, and I wouldn't have been successful, and I couldn't go back to the same things. You know, I couldn't go to my ex-in-laws. I couldn't go to my sister's house. You know, I had burnt every bridge, and I knew that if I tried to go anywhere else, I was going to dip and dodge my PO again and go right back to the same thing. And then when I found out that Community of Christ had ARC recovery services, and they had a sober house that was, or a recovery program that was spiritual based, I ended up going there. So it was like the first place that I felt safe. And I was able to ask questions about my spirituality and what was happening to me. And I had these super cool women, and plus, you know, I'm already kind of like, like a liberal, I guess. I don't know if that's even the right word for what I am, but I'm like, look at this. There's women over here running this program. All right, this is where you're supposed to be.
Right. Just found your place.
Right. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So, I mean, I stayed there. I stayed rooted there. Mm-hmm. You know, I knew that if I moved my feet, I was going to either go back to the same thing because it was easy and because that was intoxicating in itself.
Right.
You know, the lifestyle, things attached to it, the power attached to it, you know, of being a big guy, you know, mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go back to that. You know, I didn't want to go back to that.
So not wanting to go back to that, and also at the same time, deeply loving and caring for your children. How did you start to rebuild those relationships?
I didn't force it. I knew in my soul that it was just going to happen, mm-hmm. and I had to just let it happen. And there was a lot of times that I didn't retaliate. You know, my in-laws were angry and sad, and we had lost my little brother, my brother-in-law. You know what I mean? So they had mixed emotions, and they were trying to protect my children. And I was trying to see it that way. Mm-hmm. You know, I was trying to see it that way. And me trying to see it that way allowed them to probably say some things that were not so nice. And instead of me retaliating or trying to vindicate myself, I just let them roll off my back. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know, this is a process. They talk about trusting the process, allowing God to do the work in your life, that the battle isn't yours, it's His. You know, allowing the restoration that He promises to flow in my life. And it happened. You know, the relationship started to get rebuilt. The trust started to get rebuilt. My kids would come to the church service with me, or they'd come visit me at the house, or I'd go stay the night over there. You know, and over time that just became more and more and more and more and more. And I mean, now they're mine. You know what I mean?
Right. So then what are things that, because so getting your children back and living this newfound sobriety and really loving life, and you know, it's a very much of a change, but having, you know, some pretty significant trauma for quite some time. What do you do on a consistent basis to be able to work through that trauma and to be able to maintain your sobriety? What do you do today?
Okay. So I'll kind of talk about like a recent episode. So a lot of it really is one, awareness, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which just kind of between like learning about trauma, learning about myself, learning about my past experiences, and how those have altered my way of thinking, my perception of the world, and even like a physical I would say trauma, well, everybody says, but trauma is very cellular. So one of the very first things that happens when I have a trauma trigger is cellular for me. Like I can feel it in my body, whether or not if it's in my hands, depending on where I store it. Those are usually my first indicators. But so just recently, I work in the recovery community now, and we had a death of somebody that impacted us horribly. I mean, like horribly. And, before, in the past, when I experienced death, because like I've lost my mother to an overdose, I lost my brother my brother-in-law, but still my little brother. And then I can't even tell you how many friends, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know how many friends at this point. So it's like when one of those happen, when a death happens, especially when it was something so close and near and dear to my heart, it's almost like feeling all of the losses again all at once.
Right.
Okay. So I know, at least for me now, I know that what I'm feeling is one, it's not going to kill me. Like that I know, but I have to kind of talk to myself like that. And still like some disassociation happens anyways. And that's just the human's natural ability that just happens with the brain, and that's normal. You ever hear people when they talk about, oh, such and such died and I felt like I was in a fog for 2 or 3 days. Well, because you were, you were disassociated.
Yeah.
So even me being aware of what was happening with me was a form of disassociation, and it had a lot to do with the fact that I've dealt with a lot of significant losses before in the past. And knowing that even in that state that I was still okay, that's like one of my biggest things is self-talk. You know what I mean? The way I talk to myself in my head, being capable of self-soothing now at this point, and prayer, like prayer and worship. Worship is really where it's at for me. But so with the death happening, I'm aware of that I'm at a heightened state. I'll have intrusive thoughts, and I know that I'll have intrusive thoughts. I'll have flashbacks from witnessing other overdoses, imaginations, the fear of my phone is going to ring and I'll startle and I'll think that this is the phone call that they're telling me that my ex-husband is dead because he's still out there in addiction. So all of these things that are coming at me, I know that I don't actually have to use to silence those voices anymore. That I have the tools that I've gathered over time, that I can utilize on a daily basis. But the awareness really is the number one. Like this is just the way you're reacting, that this is trauma, this is how you react, everything is okay. It is going to pass. With every day it gets a little bit easier, and you know what to do with intrusive thoughts. You know what to do when you're feeling super grievous and you don't want to be by yourself. I hang out with some very, I was going to say a bad word, but I'm not going to say a bad word. Super cool. I hang out with warriors,
For someone who's out there who, is really struggling and is maybe trying to get sober or is just having a really, really tough time, are there any words of wisdom that, really spoke to you when you were having a tough time in those early days that you could maybe share?
I don't know if it spoke to me or if I heard it somewhere, but it's something that always kind of sticks with me, and it sounds so horrible when you say it, but I tell people, like, okay, for starters, a lot of drug addicts, we are probably some of the strongest, smartest people. The lives that we endured prior to addiction and during addiction is extraordinary, and every single day is a miracle that we're alive. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I also tell people, recovery is not for the faint-hearted. This is hard, but it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. It is painful. It's a painful process, but the pain is worth the liberation. You know what I mean? I had to get to a point where I did not want to be in chains anymore. I was sick of being in chains. That I ended up hating the form of bondages that I was in. And so it was the liberation that kept me moving. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is so worth it. Like the other side is insanely beautiful. Like I live an extraordinary life, And I shouldn't be, you know, I shouldn't be. I should be in prison. I should be in jail, or really, in all reality, I should be dead, you know?
Right.
I do cool stuff now. I get to work with other drug addicts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even get any better than that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out today, and your story is definitely going to help people who are out there struggling. The beautiful expression and the willingness to be genuine and real will definitely help somebody out there who's struggling and thinks that there's no way out of their active addiction, and you're really proof that there's freedom and recovery, and there is a path.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me and my sister playing around, and then we got a little too loud, and you could just hear my mom screaming in the background and stuff like that. She's a totally different person than who she is now.
And how did it make you feel when she was in that active addiction stage?
Uneasy. At the time, I didn't know she was in addiction. I just thought she was just me in general.
Okay.